Let's face it, these days, grain trains, up here in Canada at least, are pretty boring. Of course, looking good to the 12-year-old foamers on the side of the tracks is not at all the purpose of grain trains. But really, take a look at CN or CP grain trains today, and see how many cars aren't square and gray. However, as recently as 7 to 10 years ago, you could still see a huge amount of grain cars that were different shapes and colors than the ones you might see today. So what happened to Canada's colorful government grain hopper cars? Where they at though?
What they at though? What they
The hood trampoline.
what they at though? What they at?
Let's go back to the 70s for a second. A time where there were Saturday morning cartoons, hard drugs, and cars almost half the length of a 40-foot boxcar. Did I mention loads of hard drugs? By this time in the United States, railroads had switched from modified boxcars to new covered hoppers to haul grain. Meanwhile, up in Canada, CP and CN were still out here using ancient steam-era 40-foot grain boxcars. These things were falling apart by then, rusting out, leaking grain on the tracks. They just needed to be replaced for the most part. I thought it was 1972, but apparently in 1970, CN 379024, shown with the reporting mark CX, was painted and shown off 2 years before the program and the majority of the cars were even built. I have a feeling this was just one of CN's regular cylindrical hoppers just painted as a government car mock-up to demonstrate the upcoming fleet. But I'm not 100% sure. Anyways, the cars were about 59 feet in length with 47 feet 11 inches of usable space, and have 4 roof hatches and 3 gravity discharge hoppers below. These cars were much more practical and overall efficient compared to the older boxcars. They were built by 3 companies: Hawker Siddeley of Trenton, Nova Scotia, National Steel Car Company of Hamilton, Ontario, and Marine Industries of Sorel, Quebec between 1972 and 1986. They came in a few different colors, including a vibrant red on the Government of Canada hoppers and blue on the Province of Alberta cars, among others. Later Saskatchewan Grain Car Corporation hoppers received a neat green look after repairs done around 2007. Alberta's cars got a little touch-up later on in their lifespans with large Alberta logos and the Take an Alberta Break slogan, along with city and town names, like for example Edmonton, Fox Creek, Banff, Lake Louise, among a few others. You could tell what railway these cars operated on from 2 letters in the reporting mark, those being N or P. For example, ALNX was the reporting mark on Alberta hoppers operated by Canadian National, and SKPX was the reporting mark for Saskatchewan cars operated by CP Rail. Other cars would have the reporting mark CN or CPWX. These were the government and or wheat board owned hopper cars. Some of the first cars were the silver aluminum cars used on CN. These were built in the early to late 70s and were suited for lightweight rails on branch line, some of which still had rails as light as 60 pounds. Of course, with all railway equipment, problems start to occur after a while. The aluminum cars were the most problematic. The cars had cracks around the roof hatches, as well as some corrosion and metal fatigue at some stress points and seams. The rest of them seemed to have problems with the unloading gates at certain ports, where in some cases they had to be cut open. That problem was fixed a long time ago though. Some of the 4550 hoppers had slight harmonic motion or truck hunting problems at certain speeds. This was dealt with in the 80s by using new contact side bearings, and indirectly, the more widespread use of heavier continuous welded rail. Another big issue when the hoppers were introduced was that some grain elevators had to spend extra money to modify loading spouts for these new hoppers. And not only that, a few elevator managers had reportedly fell into the hoppers. After those incidents, grates were added to the top hatches. See, I've never worked at a grain elevator. I have no idea how you would just fall into a grain hopper. These cars continued on in regular service until the late 2000s and the early 2010s. By 2009, the entire fleet of silver and yellow aluminum cans had been stored away in northwestern Ontario and later cut up for scrap. A pretty complex lease on some cars ended after 25 years, leaving some cars to be sold to other operators, along with some being sold back to CP and CN. In 2017, the government slowly closed the Saskatchewan Grain Car Company, who owned the Saskatchewan Grain Cars. Their cars were sold off to short lines and other rail companies soon after. The railway industry is one that is constantly changing and constantly innovating, and these colorful grain hoppers were faced with being replaced by newer and more efficient hoppers. Delivered starting in 2018, CP ordered about 5,000 or so brand new NSC 5,431 cubic foot hoppers to directly replace the cylinders. CN followed in 2020-2021 with their own order of a few thousand cars or so. These cars are taller, shorter in length, and overall more efficient compared to the government cars that are 40 to 50 years old as of now. As efficient as these new cars are, they're missing one key thing in my opinion, and that's style. I'm 100% sure it's a cost-cutting thing, but these cars look so bland. They're just devoid of any real styling to them to signify what railway they're owned by. They just feel so corporate. Like, look at this. Eye-catching, might draw in some customers to ship grain with their company, and then look at this. Makes you say, hey, CP logo. Not even the cool one. That's the main thing I'll miss once the order for these new cars are 100% complete. The colorful era of Canadian grain trains that I grew up with. But it is what it is. The rail industry is always changing things up to deliver things more efficiently. However, I don't want to end this on a sad note, so all hope isn't lost for these hopper cars. The Alberta Railway Museum outside of Edmonton has acquired car 628006, the Visit Edmonton car, and thankfully they've cosmetically restored the car. Meanwhile, the Winnipeg Railway Museum, located downtown here in Winnipeg, is trying to acquire one of these historic hopper cars. The guys aren't really sure which one yet, but most likely it's going to be a red Coke can Canada hopper. If you'd like to, check the description to donate to the museum and consider helping us save a small piece of Canadian rail history. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more mediocre train content coming your way eventually, I don't know. Again, thanks for watching, and this is the Winnipeg Railfan saying, I don't know, check this out.
Yo, my man got on them. What the fuck are those? He got Cadillacs on his toes. What the fuck is wrong with you?